Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us here for another Sober Life podcast. I'm your host, Scott Jones, coming to you from the Sober Life Studios, brought to you by One Brother, One Sister. And maybe after the show's over, you take a few moments, you go visit One Brother, One Sister's website. It is a nonprofit that brings intervention, training, addiction, mental health training, trauma training, and education to first responders. Never at any cost to the first responders. We do it through donations. We do it through charitable organizations, and we appreciate your support. Anything you give really helps us to get the word out to our first responders and perhaps maybe be a hero to the people who've been a hero to us for so long. And you can all participate. Go to onebrother1sister.com. For joining us right here on Sober Life Podcast, I want to remind you, please like the show, subscribe to the channel, and share this with your friends. Now that we got all that out of the way, I get every once in a while I get a chance to talk to somebody who just kind of like really is interesting and sparks something with me. This is a gentleman I met. We've been doing some trainings over on the other side of Florida, over on the Gulf Coast. And we got this guy. He was a supporter. He's from Valiant Recovery. He's actually the CEO of Valiant Recovery. And they have supported us going over there and training first responders and getting the message out there. They've been a great amount of support to us. And certainly we appreciate their dedication to helping people with addictions and mental health. So that being said, let me bring him in. His name is Royce Dockrill, and he is the CEO of Valiant Recovery. Royce, how are you, brother?
Well, how about yourself, Scott?
I'm doing just fine. I appreciate you taking the time. You're a busy guy. I do know this. Tell us real quick, what is Valiant Recovery? Kind of where are you at, and what do you guys do?
So Valiant Recovery, we're primarily inpatient addiction treatment centers. We started off in Canada with 3 centers, and then in the last 4 years, we've been operating in Florida with another center there. The center in Florida, we do accept insurance and all levels of care, so we can continue to work with a person and see, great success rates. Our primary focus, I think, is really individualized treatment. We keep things really small. We've got programs as small as 5 individuals maximum, up to 20. But we want to focus on the whole person. So we take a biopsychosocial spiritual approach, looking at all aspects of an individual, so that we can figure out what's in the background driving that addiction and address those issues. Because we could just focus on the physical side of things, or the emotional side, or the spiritual side, or the psychological side, and have some level of success. But life throws all kinds of things at us, and the anxiety could come back. And if we hadn't addressed that, well, and given them some really good tools for their tool belt, that could send them into a spiral, which could end up in a slip or a relapse or whatever, right? So we want to explore all the options and sit down individually and chart out an individual treatment plan for that person, so that we can actually see, true success. And we want people happy, healthy, and sober with their lives, and families back in the picture, not just sober and miserable. So.
Now, I know that you started this with your wife 15 years ago. I got to ask, there's a lot of easier ways to make a living. There's much easier ways. Why would you guys, obviously, since you did it together, you and your wife, why did you find this to be important for you to do?
We felt called as a couple to do this, because in our hometown of Kelowna, British Columbia, where we started the first center, there was a real lack. I mean, there were government-funded programs, there were some church-funded programs, but the success rate at those isn't as good as we would like to see. And primarily that's because they only focus on maybe the addiction, or they maybe focus more on the spiritual side. But we wanted to combine all of that and bring it together, so that we were dealing with the whole person and looking at the complete picture. And we've been keeping it really small, as opposed to, 30, 40, 50, 100 bed centers, where if I could keep everybody's name straight for a day, that would be a successful day. That's just not successful recovery, right? So
Well, and that's important. That's by design that you kept it small because people do get lost in the larger centers. And I'm not saying that there could be some really good ones out there. I'm not knocking them, but it is really important that you have that individual time and you get to know people one on one, isn't it?
No, for sure. And even because it's so small, even if we're doing a group session, because you get to know the other patients in the program, you build a level of comfort and you're able to actually open and discuss some pretty deep subjects in group sessions that would otherwise be reserved for one-on-one sessions at a lot of other programs, right? So we do see some really cool moments in group sessions where, you know, if somebody's talking about a sexual trauma that they experienced, and you know, especially if it's males, I mean, most guys are not going to open up about that. But if somebody has the courage to do that in a group session, all of a sudden others start chiming in with their experiences, right? Because they realize, oh, it's not just me. This has happened to other people and I'm not alone. So the small group size allows us to even dig deep in group sessions.
And tell me about staffing. Are you really particular in who you bring on, and what kind of skills are you looking for in a staff to be an effective staff?
We are very particular. For any of our staff, we try and have a good mixture of staff. So some that are in recovery themselves, some that maybe have the education, all kinds of different people, because you don't know who's going to click with each client. Sometimes that really, you've been in my shoes, walked down my path. Sometimes that person clicks the best with you, and that person clicks with a lot of people. But sometimes it's the intellectual person that really clicks with some people, and we do get some really high functioning individuals that are, you know, running businesses and stuff sometimes, and those people click well with the intellectual person. So if we didn't have that person in there, you know, that you know, we could miss out on an opportunity. And then we've got just, you know, some people that haven't struggled with addictions. But sometimes I think if we're going to learn to live like a normie, who better to teach you how to do some of those things than a normie, you know? But with our staff that are in recovery, we require that they have 5 years clean and sober, which is a really big change from a lot of centers, because I talk to people all the time who are working in recovery programs and they've got a year sober, or maybe they graduated 3 months ago from the program that they're actually at. And although that's great because they understand your program, they can contribute, it's a very triggering environment and it's high stress, and we just don't want to be a contributing factor towards somebody's slip or relapse, right? And so we want to have, you know, somebody with a good foundation underneath them as an example to the clients of what they can achieve, and, you know, what sobriety looks like, you know, years down the road. So
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because it's important that people develop their own recovery in their own kind of areas before you start working in a treatment center, because that treatment center cannot be your sole source of your recovery, because now it's a job too. And there are a lot of stressors that go on there. So you're not just protecting your clients by having people who are a little more stable. You're protecting the people themselves, the employees, by making sure that they are okay before they start. I got to ask, 15 years, a lot. We're constantly changing in what we've learned, especially right now. There's a couple things. I'll bring up. The first one is the connection between mental health and addiction. It is more and more becoming like you cannot treat one without the other. How do you guys approach that at Valiant?
So we've always treated co-occurring disorders at the same time. I mean, prior to COVID in 2020, I would have guessed that probably 80% of patients are struggling with even some sort of mental health, if it's anxiety and depression. But I would say post COVID, I don't know if any of us haven't been affected in some way, shape, or form that's continued to linger on in our lives. You know, so I think it's probably everybody now that needs some shape or form of mental health stuff, right? So our program is structured around a 90-day time period to get through all the different courses and materials that we've built into the program. But each month we're going to cover all of the different mental health things. So anxiety and depression, grief and loss, trauma, anger, codependency. We do a relapse prevention course that goes all the way back to childhood, deals with all the different life events and experiences that we've gone through that have formed us, shaped us into the person that we are today. And so that really helps us to highlight areas that we maybe need to dig deeper in the one-on-one sessions. So that's been really good. That's called the Genesis process with Michael Dye. He recently passed away. So that's something that we incorporated into our program, and we always have. We include 12-step and all of those sorts of program options as well. But so each month that they come, they're getting a little bit of all of those. So even if somebody only came for a month, they're still going to walk away with tools to address all the different types of mental health aspects that life throws at us, right? So, but obviously, the longer that they can be in a program, the more successful the outcomes are and everything.
Let me ask you, because at the very beginning you were talking about you have the detox, res, PHP, you get the full continuum of care, and you just mentioned you try to base everything on at least a 90-day kind of framework. There's a lot of places that don't operate that way. They just do their little piece and then they send people on. That's problematic, isn't it? Because if you unpack somebody's problems or trauma and they're only with you for 10 or 14 days, you don't have time to deal with it. So there's a lot of this peeling the layers of the onion, but we're not getting a lot of healing. That's really important, is it, to stay in one place?
I believe so. And the thing is you're not rehashing everything. Every time you go to a new program and you start over, they don't know where you're at. You got to start the whole story over and try and catch them up on what you've worked through at the last program. Whereas if you're just stepping down through levels of care in the same program, everybody's still on the same page. You're still working with the same therapists. It's just a different intensity of sessions and groups and that sort of thing, right? So the other thing it does allow us to do by being an all-in-one continuum of care is that we can work with most people's insurance to get them an adequate length of stay. Whereas otherwise, if we were a detox and, they only wanted to pay for 5 days and then they wanted to step them down, now they're off to another center. And then at that center, if they weren't willing to give them more than a month, then, they're stepping down into a PHP and so on and so forth. And so it's terrible, right? But we've been really successful lately at keeping people for 60, 90, even 120 days in the residential level. So our documentation has been getting better and better so that the insurance companies are seeing the merit and the value for keeping patients in the residential program longer. That's not to say that we don't get the odd one that we're battling. I had one the other day with Aetna, and they were giving 2-day extensions for residential level of care. And I'm just, it's a monumental amount of paperwork every 2 days, but it is what it is. And we want to try and get her the most number of days as that we can. So we're fighting for her.
You know what, Royce, I'm glad you brought that up because I like to talk about it sometimes and it's not a popular conversation, but it's got to be maddening sometimes, these protocols set up by the insurance companies that really have nothing to do with patient care. It's got nothing to do with success of that care. It's really got to do with them kind of trying to shortchange how much they're going to spend and how much. That must be really frustrating. And I mean, how do you deal with that?
Well, it is frustrating. It's been a learning curve for myself because for the first 11 years of being in this field, we worked in Canada where there is no insurance coverage. It's all cash pay. And so it's a different sort of environment because people have a level of buy-in. And if they're having a rough day and they want to walk out the door halfway through, they think about it a little more because they're, do I really want to walk away from the investment and the money that I've put into this program? Whereas in the US where we're dealing with insurance, if you're having one of those pink cloud moments and you feel amazing and fantastic because you haven't had 14 days clean sober for the last 15 years, you can talk yourself out of it. And if it's not costing you anything and the door's still open to come back in a few weeks or a month if you need to, then it's too easy sometimes, right? So it's been frustrating working with insurance companies because we have enough issues trying to keep the client motivated to continue moving forward in recovery, because we've got our addictive brain fighting us, telling us that we're good. We don't need all of this. This was overkill. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm never going to drink again. They pull out the script. It's the same script that they use at every center, verbatim, word for word, right? And
Right.
we've got them fighting themselves and wanting to stay, but then we've got the insurance company saying, well, we think they're doing really amazing, and I don't think they need to be in the residential level of care. We're just going to skip PHP too, and we think IOP would be a great selection for this individual, and so you're fighting it on both sides, trying to get people. And I can have, like I said, I have enough struggles with the patient. Maybe I got an authorization for another 10 or 15 days, but they're feeling great and don't even want to stay. And so I'm trying to explain to them, like, if the insurance company is giving you 15 days, there's a reason. They don't hand these out freely and willingly. If they're willing to do that, then they see that you still got things to work on. And so take advantage of it while it's available, because eventually they will stop giving days. So,
now, this being said, I mean, you can be cut off at any time. Sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you got every confidence. Hey, this is great. We've worked with this insurance before, and this is the situation. We know we're good, and then turns out the next day they're cut off. How do you guys deal with that? Because I know there are still places out there that pretty much, okay, your insurance is cut off. We're going to get you out of the building in the next hour, and we're just going to push you down the road, and we don't care where you end up. What do you guys do in those difficult situations?
Difficult situation. And so, I mean, it's case by case. I mean, obviously, the further somebody is away from their home, the more assistance they need. I mean, if they were living down the street and could easily do PHP without a problem, then we can, transition them in a day or two or whatever that looks like. But if they've got to make arrangements, or they really don't have a safe place to go back home, and they're looking to relocate down in Florida and start a new, fresh life, learn new people, places, and things, then we'll help find them, those sorts of, maybe a sober living home, or if it's a step down into PHP, but they're in a different location. It's so multifaceted. It's really, but we don't want to leave anybody hanging or push them out in the cold, right? So.
And it's important for treatment centers to build relationships with local entities, halfway houses, all sorts of things, even other treatment centers, because they may have a specialty situation that would be better. And you guys, there are still some out there that are still, all they're doing is doing battle with each other. But those relationships are important for your success, aren't they?
They are, for sure. I do wish that more sober living homes would get FAR registered, because they've tied our hands on being able to even bring up their name in a discussion. Because we're not allowed to recommend anybody that's not registered with FAR, other than Oxford houses, because they have a separate agreement. But so we kind of then give them a computer and ask them to do their own search locally. But there are ways around finding them. But it's just it would be easier if I could confidently recommend somebody because I knew they had FAR. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, tell me, what has shocked you the most about this business and about addiction and treatment? What has shocked you the most?
I'm not really sure. I mean, nothing shocks me anymore. I don't know. I think it's probably still government response to these things. Like, they just, even in Canada, they just handle it really stupid. Like, I mean, they've been using Portland as a role model example. They tried doing that for a couple of years, legalizing, in British Columbia, legalizing all forms of drugs in small quantities, and that didn't go very well. So I think that sort of stuff surprises me the most, is just the ignorance of politicians when it comes to this sort of stuff, and talking to the wrong people and taking advice from things that just aren't working. But.
Yeah, I think I think what always shocks me is that it seems like there's an acceptable number of deaths that people kind of say, oh, well, that's better. Like if we go from 20,000 down to 18,000 and they're like, oh, that's an improvement. I'm like, how can we even say that's better? It's not. I mean, one is too many. Do you feel there's still an apathy out there for people who are suffering?
If I go back to the government, like in BC, we've got safe injection sites. We've got wet housing, so it's free housing where they can live at. They can't use. I don't think they can use in their rooms, but there's a room, downstairs where they can safely use. So they've freed up any resources that the individual has to just now spend on their addiction. They don't have to worry about housing and all of those sorts of things. But there's no requirement to even be thinking about becoming clean or sober. It's their I don't know, their philosophy, I guess, is just that they'll continue to keep them alive so that one of these days the light bulb will turn on and they'll be willing and ready to get help.
Yeah.
And they keep citing that stigma is keeping people from getting better. And I don't understand how stigma is keeping them from accepting help. Stigma is keeping them stuck in their cycle of feeling bad about themselves, and that evolving wheel of shame. But it's not keeping them from accepting the help. I mean, the help's still there. I mean, especially once you get in the door. But I mean, there are certain, I guess, of stigma you could argue, but the way they portray it, it's just.
It seems like there's so much focus on harm reduction. There's not a lot of focus on actually getting well. And, we see that with, some people do need a medically assisted treatment. Some people do need that because of certain co-occurring disorders or something else, but it should not be across the boards. Everybody should be on MAT. Again, that's a harm reduction idea.
Yeah, and the insurances are pushing that as well. I mean, that's one of the questions that's a recurring theme on our weekly assessment reviews is, well, have they considered MAT yet? What are the barriers to doing MAT? And it's like their personal views and opinions on things. Well, that's a pretty big barrier, but yeah, no, they're constantly asking. And I think in certain situations, and there are better medications. I think methadone is a horrible medication, and yet it's still very prevalent in the MAT world, and their philosophy is lifetime maintenance. So they have no intention of ever getting you off of that stuff.
It's difficult, and I have my own personal views on it, but let's switch gears for a minute. The last several years, say the last 6 or 7 years, we've seen the prolific saturation of fentanyl in our market. How has that changed what you guys do, or has it affected what you guys do? And does it create, what has that done? Has it created more alarms for you guys about the urgency of getting better?
I mean, it hasn't changed our approach so much. I think it's changed the approach of the user, because now having a box of naloxone at home in your kitchen is not uncommon. It's part of the using practice. I mean, we have patients that come in that were getting naloxone 3 times a week.
Jeez.
It's before that wasn't a thing. If you overdosed, you were dead. And so now you can come back to life. So you get like these re-ups, like a video game, like the consequences are minimalized. And so, I think the MAT option, naltrexone or Vivitrol or something like that, for that person is going to keep them from going back down that road, whether it keeps them from cross addicting into some other substance. It's hard to say, but it would certainly keep them from that drug of choice.
I got to ask Royce, and I know that working in treatment for over 20 years in different roles, there's nights when the head hits the pillow and my last thought is, I can't do this shit anymore. I'm so over it. I'm tired of losing people. I'm tired of losing battles with insurance companies. I'm just tired of it all. what is it that gets you up in the, because I know you have those moments, we all do. What is it that gets you up in the morning, makes you pour that cup of coffee and get your ass to work? What is it that motivates you when things get crazy?
There's a few things, I guess, but I mean, I have a lot of employees now, so they're relying on me to make sure this whole thing keeps rolling. But yeah, I mean, we my wife and I just feel this is a calling, and we haven't been released from that calling yet. So we're gonna keep pushing forward regardless of how difficult it is and how many days we feel like not pushing forward, because there are many of those. But yeah, we'll keep doing it as long as we're supposed to. So,
have you had moments where maybe a client, and obviously we're not going to bring up any names, but a moment where a client came in and you were a part of whatever was going on and they made an impression on you? Do you have clients that kind of stay with you in your heart?
Yeah, there are definitely those memorable clients, right? And we've had lots of those over the years. I mean, they tend to be the ones that are there longer for a few reasons. You get to form a better relationship bond with that person because they're around longer, but then they also do better because they've got all that foundation. They've dealt with a lot of the underlying issue stuff, right? And so, and it's, sometimes it's the ones that you have to encourage partway through to extend and stay longer. Other times it's the ones that right out of the gate we're like, no, I'm here for 90 days, but those ones, I mean, obviously we see the best results. So, I mean, you get the good feelings out of that one, right? Yeah. There's been, like, I mean, the one individual that I was talking about who is using naloxone 3 times a week. I mean, we tried getting her into treatment several times. Got her into detox would drop the ball. This is before we were doing our own detox would drop the ball and discharge her to her boyfriend, who she would use with. And and then she'd go home and then she wouldn't answer the phone for a few days. Mom would be freaking out because she knows how often she gets naloxone. And so she came in and was with us for 2 months, and saw an incredible turnaround. Wasn't really willing to do the 3rd month, but she did step down into some other levels of care after that. So, but definitely a saved life there for sure, because he was on a dark path, that's for sure.
Royce, let's play a game for a minute. You've got some real control over the universe, all right? Again, we're pretending. If you could see something change, either in society, in the government, or in treatment itself, if you could see something change in the next several years, what would you really love to see change, and what changes do you think are really needed right now?
That's a tough one. I mean, there's a lot of enabling that goes on, even in the counseling world. I mean, definitely in the government. I think if we were to be able to, minimize some of that enabling and being able to use it more in a motivating factor, like the carrot in front of a horse sort of thing, right? I think we would see a shift in things, with people seeking help in treatment programs and stuff. But I think there are also a lot of counselors and this goes back to us in our hiring process. A lot of times we won't hire a really good counselor, because a really good counselor dealing with somebody who's maybe experienced trauma or grief and loss is a very empathetic, understanding, emotionally attached sometimes individual, and that's not the person that we need in a treatment program, because unfortunately they believe everything that comes out of the mouth of the person in front of them and can't understand why they would lie to them. I mean, I'm their counselor. We're making good work here. Why would they sabotage that and lie to me? That doesn't make any sense. So I think there are a lot of counselors out there that take on addiction clients, and instead of referring them to an inpatient program to get a good foundation, try doing the foundational work themselves. But when you only get client for once a week, even if it's for several years, it takes a really long time to get that foundation. Whereas in a program like ours, we're doing 25 hours a week minimum of group sessions and counseling. It would take 2 years of once a week to accomplish the same amount of therapy with somebody. So if they could send them off to a treatment program somewhere and get that foundation laid, they could continue now working with that patient weekly and actually see good success and see results and actually, have some achievements accomplished. So I think, things like that would help as well. But I don't know if there's one big thing I would just wave my magic wand and change things, but
It's nice. It's nice to dream. So, somebody's looking for a treatment center for their loved one, and that's usually what happens. Mom or dad is looking for the kid or somebody. And there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of fancy websites and promises and different things. If let's say you're talking to Bobby's got a problem and Bobby's mom is searching frantically, nobody knows what to look for. We just go with the bells and whistles. We don't know. What would you tell them? What are the things you should look for in a quality treatment center?
I think you definitely want a program that's not just looking at the addiction, but it's looking at the whole person. So some programs would say holistic, but so for some that still leaves out some things. But if you're looking at the whole person, bio, psychosocial, and spiritual, that's the whole package, right? I think that's really important. I think smaller is better, but that doesn't necessarily mean this. Oftentimes the smaller programs stay completely out of network with insurance, and so that ties a lot of people's hands, right? Yeah. Where bigger ones have the luxury to go in network with more options, right? So there are a lot of variables there. With us, we're actually working on becoming in network with a few of the insurances and looking at potentially taking Medicare locally, because we live in a retirement community, and so there are a lot of individuals that have Medicare. So part of our give back to the community would be looking at adding on Medicare so that we can help with those individuals. But there are lots of contributors. If it's an individual that needs gender specific or is fine with co-ed, there's just so many things. But yeah, you can get distracted by the swimming pool or the sauna, all of those different things.
There was one place years ago, they had this beautiful website with people surfing and deep sea fishing and sailboarding and doing all this stuff, and the thing was in Arizona. And I'm like, these were obvious ocean pictures, and they got in trouble. They said, we're selling a feeling. That wasn't meant to say, but people don't understand that. At Valiant, if somebody wants to learn more about you, certainly look at the website. I believe it's valiantrecovery.com, correct?
That's the Canadian location. So the valiantrecovery.us would take you to the US, the Florida location.
Look at the website, but it's important to talk to somebody too, though, isn't it? Because you can get a lot from your gut feeling of talking to somebody, right?
And we've got questions that we need some answers to as well, just to make sure that we're an appropriate fit, that this isn't, something that's not appropriate. Because, for example, we don't do adolescents, right? So I don't know that I say we don't do on the website, but in a phone would get accomplished really quickly, right? So we can certainly meet all of their questions in a phone call a lot faster and more thoroughly and satisfactory. But we're always going to have, follow-up questions that go along with detox and finding appropriate levels of care and learning to know what drug of choice they're dealing with. Because, if we were full, for example, and somebody was struggling with fentanyl, we would want to try and help them find another program to get into quickly. Whereas if it was, they were just smoking weed and it was, becoming a problem in their life, if they could wait a week or two, it wouldn't be life-threatening particularly, right? So we need to know the urgency as well, and our census and being able to respond and all of those sorts of things. So,
Royce, I want you to take a moment and brag. I want you to brag. I know it's not in your nature, but you're going to do it anyway. Because when somebody comes to Valiant for help, now I know, and let's be honest, even at Valiant, you get hit with paperwork. We get that. It's you and I would love to change that. We can't. It's not our faults, but we can make it easier on them. But it's still hard. In a lot of big, especially these big treatment centers, you get in there in the first 2 days, you are scrambling, doing all of this, doing paperwork. There's really no you time. It's all about doing what you have to do to get in. It could be very stressful. Do you approach that differently with people coming in, especially since you're a smaller unit? Can you approach that differently, other than the fact you still got to get that work done?
Well, we've got timelines from the state that we have to hit.
Yes.
So, seeing a doctor within the first 24 hours, and getting the history and physical done, and the psychological evaluation, and then we've got the clinical stuff with the biopsychosocial, and the intake assessments, and then the treatment planning. And so there is a lot to do in the first 24 or 48 hours sort of thing that's mandated on us. So as much as we'd like to change that, there's not too much. I don't think that would be different from a lot of places.
But you also go to you start to build the relationship with them. It's not all just that. You take time with them, right?
Because the staff that are doing those assessments, because we're a smaller staff, because we're a smaller center, it's the same staff doing those assessments that are working with you in the group sessions, that are maybe doing the one-on-ones with you. So it's not that you have to keep rehashing the same information, because as you're doing those forums and gathering that information, the therapist is retaining that information to carry on into your first one-on-one session, right? So the first one-on-one session, you can actually start getting into some things, as opposed to, starting all the way back in the beginning and moving forward with everything again, right? So there's certainly that part is sped up, just because of, we don't have everybody siloed into their little areas. We wear a lot of hats because of the size of the program. So everybody gets versed in different aspects of the program. So.
And that works to the advantage of your clients, that, like you said, they're not having to meet new people every 5 minutes, tell the same story over and over again. Everybody gets to know you, and that's important. Before we wrap up, I really want to know this, and this is important. I believe your daughter works there too, right?
Yeah, she fills in here and there. Yeah,
she fills in. Well, that's good. I mean, hey, if you can keep your daughter involved, and your whole family's involved, you're doing something right. I'll tell you that. Nice kid, by the way. What kind of feeling? How would you describe the atmosphere at Valiant? We're talking about Punta Gorda right now. What kind of atmosphere is it? How does it feel? And what were you trying to develop when you kind of built it around that atmosphere?
So we try and make it as home-like of a feel as we can, and because it's small, it's more family-like as well, right? And so, we took what was a commercial surgical center, completely renovated it, replaced all the flooring, and textured the walls and painted it so that it feels more like a home, because we've got so many hurdles and roadblocks from keeping people to stay engaged and stay in program. And so we want to remove as many of those obstacles as we can. And so one of those is keeping it from being institutional, because if you're staring at institutional, walls and floors every day, you start to miss home, and you get homesick, and you mentally check out. You may be there, but we want you engaged and focused. So we've tried our best to make it feel like a home. So we get phone calls from people all the time, and most people are anxious coming to treatment, but the moment they walk in the door, their anxiety level drops significantly. And it's, the parents are concerned, do we need to stay in town for a few hours just in case? And, within minutes of walking in the door, they're like, no, you can go home. So it's it gives them a level of comfort when their loved one is comfortable enough to tell them that they don't need them to stay around anymore, right? So I think that's a big testament to what we've tried to accomplish there with that. And then even with the small group size, everybody eats together at a kitchen table sort of scenario. The staff do make the meals, so they don't have to worry about, you know, any of that sort of thing. And just focus on themselves and doing the work at hand.
That's awesome. I think a lot of treatment centers overlook the importance of hospitality, the importance of comfort. There's still treatment centers out there, and I hate to say it, that still think their attitude is still like, well, they're lucky to be here. They're lucky to be off the streets. You know, whatever we give them, they should be grateful for. And it's like, but if you treat them like that, then that's not recovery. It's important that you treat them from the beginning as a person of value and a person who should have respect and comfort, right?
I mean, especially because their self-worth and their self-value is in the toilet, right? So if that's your philosophy from the beginning, it's going to be pretty hard to get them to see the value in themselves, right? And so I think, that's definitely an important factor. It's one of the biggest things, I think, for a lot of people. I mean, there are some people who, you know, have too high of a value of themselves, but I think overall, most of it isn't that. It's people feeling that they're, you know, worth less, right? So
yeah. Do me a favor, hit us with the website and the phone number real quick.
Ooh, phone number. Numbers. I'll give you the website.
I'll tell you what. I'll put the phone number in the comments. If you're watching this, you guys check the comments, and the phone number will be in there. But what is the website?
Go to valiantrecovery.us.
Valiantrecovery.us. Last question, Royce. Last thing, I'm going to put you on the spot here. Somebody out there is considering getting help, but they're afraid. They're afraid, and they think, well, maybe I'll just wait a little longer, or maybe I really don't. What do you want to tell that person?
I think oftentimes we get stuck in our head worried about what maybe our employer is going to think. And the truth of the matter is, I mean, if we're a good employee and we're doing fairly well at our job, the employer sees the value in you taking some time away for yourself and getting better, because you're going to be so much more productive when you come back to them, that's not even a concern. Oftentimes we see employers stepping up and willing to pay for people's treatment, but the response from employers usually is very different than what we've imagined in our heads, right? They're generally very supportive. I mean, if you were a poor employee, then there might be a different outcome, but for most people, I mean, the employers are very supportive, very helpful, and family as well. I mean, most families have been waiting for this day to come along, and they're willing to, even if they're estranged, once they hear that you're getting into a program, there is a level of support even before you get in. But once you get into program and they start seeing some changes in your life, and they see the evidence, the fruit on the tree, that things are different now than they were before, you know, those things start to come back into our lives.
And I just want to say, just make that phone call. It's not a commitment. You don't even have to give your name right away. Just if you want to ask a couple questions, ask those questions. Because I think a lot of people make that final determination after they pick up the phone, not before, right?
Yeah. No, and it's that very heavy phone call, right? It's a 1,000-pound handset to pick up. But once they do, and we start talking, and it goes quite well, right? But yeah, it's that first step that's the hardest step. So make that step. Give us and we even have a chat option on our website too. So if they want to just chat, and then we can do that, and it kicks it over into a text message, and then we can continue chatting on the phone, right? So it's a very non-committal option for people who just want to ask a few questions without.
Sounds great, Royce. Royce, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on. I also want to appreciate you being one of the good guys in the business who's doing it the right way, helping people, and you and your entire family are good people. Thank you so much for what you do, my friend.
Thank you for having me. It was a good time.
It was. Hey, we didn't end the world. Nothing bad happened. I mean, it was not terrible. And I want to tell everybody out there, please check out Valiant Recovery. find out if it's your cup of tea or not your cup of tea. You're not going to know until you call them or until you visit their website, or, maybe arrange for a tour. You do tours too if people want to come and look, right?
Do tours, and if somebody calls and maybe we don't accept their insurance or we're not the right fit, we do have other programs that we know of that maybe we can make a recommendation or something like that as well. So help shorten the search for a quality program.
Excellent. So check them out at Valiant. Don't forget, after the show, take a moment, go to onebrother1sister.com, donate a few dollars to help our first responders deal with addictions, deal with trauma. That's what we're here to do. I want to thank my guest, Royce Dockrill, again from Valiant Recovery. I'm your host, Scott Jones. Thanks for joining us. We will catch you next time right here on the Sober Life Podcast.